How's it going, guys? I'm Connor from Running Warehouse, and we're back at it again with another episode of the Running Warehouse Connection, our weekly show where we bring the running community together to talk about anything and everything running related. Now, this week we've got a footwear specialist in the building. He's worked on a lot of your favorite HOKA running shoes. He's the product line manager at HOKA. We've got Zack. Zack, how are you doing today?
Hi, everybody. I'm doing pretty well.
Well, Zack, I think me and you have known each other now for a couple years. I think the first time we met, I was down in Santa Barbara. We were in the HOKA labs, and you were surrounded by shoes everywhere, and I was a little jealous because it seemed like the dream job. So I guess for the people at home, how did you get started working in the running shoe industry?
Yeah, that first place you saw us, I think we called the bunker. Yeah, shoes than windows for sure. That was a fun place. I got started in the running industry working a summer job in a running shoe store here in Santa Barbara, California, Santa Barbara Running. And it's your local mom and pop shop. Joe and Monica DeVries are staples of the running scene here in Santa Barbara. They're huge ultra marathon runners, and Monica actually launched Rabbit running clothing here a couple of years ago. And it was that perfect introduction to everything that the running community can be. So I started working there in roughly 2007-8, and that was actually a couple of years later we saw HOKA come into the shop for the first time. We actually had the Bondis and the Fates when they were brand new, about 2010-11.
Yeah, I remember when HOKA kind of first started to get into the run specialty shops, and it was actually crazy. I think a lot of people didn't take it seriously. What were your first thoughts when you kind of saw a shoe as massive as the Mafate?
I said, Joe, what the hell is this? what do we have? It took me forever to figure out, I didn't want to put it on my foot at first. It was definitely crazy. But once I finally started to see how much people liked it, it was that, oh, okay, yeah, I'll pull it out a couple more times. I'll see what it's like. And then what really got me excited about the product was people that came back in after we had sold it. It did tell us how much they loved it, how comfortable and cushioned it was. And that was the sort of impetus for, oh, okay, maybe there's something here.
Yeah, I think especially in some of those earlier HOKA models, they had, a very massive design, and it stood out. But I think that's kind of part of the reason why HOKA has gained so much traction over the years. It's because they are different. They're willing to push the boundaries. And over the years, we've seen a lot of really cool projects. And you've been with HOKA now for a long time. Can you tell us about some of your favorite projects you've worked on?
Yeah, favorite projects. There's a couple really fun ones. The Rincon was one of my favorites. I think that kind of actually goes back into how I got into product with HOKA in particular. I was a tech rep after I was in the running store for a couple of years. And the first day when I went in for product training as a tech rep, as a field service rep, as we called it in HOKA, we got to try brand new prototypes of the Clifton and the HOKA. They weren't even out on the market yet. They were brand new shoes. And that was kind of when I first found my HOKA that I knew was going to be part of my rotation forever going forward. And I really couldn't decide between the Clifton and the HOKA. I love them so much. But that Clifton was probably what ended up becoming my number one rotational shoe for a long time, just because it was stupid light. How can you have this much cushion in something that's, oh, you say it's 7.5 ounces? I don't get it. What's going on here? And the Clifton kept on getting better and better for a wider range of runners. It still is my heavy mileage shoe within the rotation. But there was something about that magic of this isn't right how light a shoe can be that stuck with me. And when we got to work on the Rincon project, that was the major focus. How can we get stupid comfort at incredibly lightweight? And every time, each model, each prototyping round kept on getting better and better. But the first one that we got was kind of that same feeling. It was oh my God, hell yeah, we did it again. Almost broke the designer's hand from high-fiving her so hard. It was great.
Yeah, it's funny you brought up that Clifton one and HOKA as the first shoes that really got you intrigued, because that was kind of the turning point for me as well. I believe I tried on a Stinson, a Mafate, but it really wasn't a shoe for a runner like me who's, running competitively. When that Clifton came out, it was so light. It just had a magical feeling on foot. So that really was the start for me as well. And over the years, we've seen a lot of great performance shoes, lightweight shoes, but also have that highly cushioned design that Hoka is so well known for. And then, of course, you get to the Rincon where it is today. And I think that was, while the Clifton is a great shoe still, it's moved on from that first version. I think the Rincon, while it is a shoe on its own, it really does have a lot of DNA of that first Clifton. So I think that is why a lot of people have really gravitated towards that shoe. But again, it is its own shoe, and I think it's found a place in a lot of people's lineup. What are you using that shoe most for in your own training lineup?
When I've been a little bit out of shape for a while, so when I am a little out of shape and I need to feel a little lighter, it's not just the going out and consistent daily training, but it's like, that's that extra incentive to get out, even when I'm not pushing the pace. So daily training like that, or when I do want to go for a longer tempo, it fits that, like, I know it can handle whatever I want to throw at it, so it's that kind of confidence booster for me.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of for me as well. It's one of those shoes that can do so many things so well. Daily training, tempo runs. I know a lot of people that race marathons in them because they're just so light. So it really can do so many things so well. So that's why I like the shoe. Really, the only complaint that I have with the shoe, and it's not even really a complaint, is it does show a little bit of wear pretty quickly, but that's what happens when you have a shoe that's so lightweight. You're going to have trade-offs in durability, but at the end of the day, the price point is so amazing that you really can't complain that much.
And that was part of why the Rincon was fun, is because we're trying to find that balance, and we'll always keep on, shifting it a little bit to make sure we have it tuned in. But yeah, the goal was make this sucker as lightweight as possible. So that is some of the trade-off. Rubber is the heaviest and hardest element into a shoe. So being able to pull some of that away really helps the ride, really helps the weight. And yeah, that was one of the balancing acts that you have to kind of weigh in each hand.
Yeah, there's always that balancing act because everyone always wants the lightest shoe, the most durable shoe, the fastest shoe, the responsive shoe, but you can't have everything. But when you're looking at performance, for me, I've worked help with testing with the Evo Spike, the Rehi, the Carbon X, so many great shoes, but not a lot of people know what goes behind testing these shoes. What does the testing process look like? Who does it? How long does it take? What goes into it?
So much. I mean, each project is a little unique. We have some testing that we run every single shoe through. And I think a lot of what it boils down to is really shoes on feet. There's no substitute for getting people to actually put miles on a shoe, see how it performs at different paces, at different distances, and at different body types. So we have everybody from our elite athletes all the way down to not so elite runners anymore, down to everybody that's just putting on daily miles in a shoe like the Bondi or Clifton. So it's that. We do have some testing in labs for specific models when we want to test some of the stability, some of the traction, some of the comfort and cushioning. But it's really get as many miles in these shoes as possible and figure out what we can find out and build upon it for the next round.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that so many different types of people are testing the shoes because everyone's different. So you want to get that feedback from every spectrum of runner. But when we're looking at maybe some of the more elite, some of the really high-end racing products, I know the Aggies here in San Luis Obispo, NAS Elite, they've been big factors in helping making these shoes as fast and perform as well as possible. How big of an impact do these elite groups have on the testing process?
Huge impact. A lot of it. Our first track spikes we made for Leo Manzano when we signed him. We have a focus to providing the tools for our athletes to compete at the highest levels. So you can be assured they're definitely going to be testing to make sure that those products get there. So they'll be involved sometimes as early as initial concept. We've been going through some early rounds of designs for future seasons here in these last couple of weeks, and we've had some athletes talking to us about exactly what works and doesn't work for them on racing shoes and training shoes. But particularly when you get to racing shoes, you got to have the people that are going to be pushing it to the extreme and going the fastest, telling you what's up. So that's why the Aggies are great, because you've got so many runners that perform at such a high level. And then NAZ, when we want to focus on some of those marathon kind of tools, we have Olympic trials champions and national champions, and it's hard to beat the expertise we can draw from that group.
Yeah, the expertise at the end of the day is really what helps push the products forward. And I remember when Leo Mazzano was getting ready for the Olympic trials and you guys were building that spike for him, and he had such specific preferences, and he really helped kind of drive that shoe to what it was. And before that, HOKA was fairly new to racing and definitely to spikes. So, Leo played a huge role in that, and I was super excited to hear his feedback and how what he actually looks for in a performance spike. So that was interesting, but I want to move this forward to you. And what are your favorite shoes right now? I know you say you're not training quite as much as you'd like, but what's your lineup looking like? What should people be looking for in the HOKA lineup?
The nice thing is there's such a big variety. Like, it can be pretty much every day of the week. I grew up doing triathlons, so I mixed biking and running, and unfortunately I've started to swim again, but running is always nice because you can have so many different kind of types of workouts and intensities. So the Rincon is always a staple, kind of as that confidence booster, like I said. Most miles for me probably get run in a Clifton or some kind of Clifton prototype with different foams and things like that. And then there's some really cool things I can't talk about yet that are for like my easy days that are going to be a lot of fun. And then when I have been trying to turn up the pace a little bit, or even just getting some good strides in, there's a new version of the Mach that we're working on that's going to be pretty baller pretty soon.
That's awesome. I think the Mach is one of those shoes that's overlooked at times, and it kind of started with the Clayton, and I think a lot of people liked that. It moved to the Mach, and it got a slightly different feel. And I think that is one of those shoes that it has so much potential. And what I've been seeing with you guys, you mentioned you have shoes with different midsoles. You guys are always pushing the boundaries on responsiveness and weight. So that is something that I'm super excited for, to see that Mach kind of move in the next direction and be even faster and more performance oriented than ever. So that's a shoe I've been waiting to make that kind of step to the next level.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a fun one for people. I think it took some of the learnings actually from the Clifton Edge, which I had been putting some good miles in, and really refines in a way people are going to like. But there's a couple extra steps off of that, so it's going to be a fun shoe.
Awesome. And now the Clifton Edge, that is a shoe that is basically, it's just coming out right now. Is that a shoe that you played a big role on? And for people who don't know much about it, what is it all about?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be the product line manager for that Clifton Edge, and it was a super fun project just because we get to kind of start from scratch. It's an open sandbox. We get to kind of make this training shoe as progressive as we can, as we want, and push lighter in some ways, smoother in others. So we have some new fun geometries to that shoe. And actually, it's this guy right here behind me. That really make for a super smooth transition, which means running, it's really fun. As a project, it was super fun because we got to play with some of the stack heights and geometries and the rocker profile itself, as well as some new materials in the upper. So it's kind of that, like, you get to discover so much at each round of prototyping that it was one of those I kept on looking for when it was time to get the next round ready.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Clifton Edge, that's the shoe that I've been waiting for most. It has an amazing look. It has an amazing feel. I think it's going to surprise a lot of people out there. And when you look at that shoe, new midsole compounds, new geometries, those are big factors. I think when we look at a lot of shoes right now, especially on the race side, those are two major factors. But a third factor, the carbon fiber plate. We've started to see HOKA now utilizing it in a couple of their shoes. How important are carbon fiber plates, I guess in general, but specifically for racing shoes as well?
Yeah, it's another tool to add to the toolbox, right? Like there's so many different things that you can do when you add that into between two foams. You can get some extra bounce back. The foams react a little differently. So I don't think it's going to be limited just to training shoes in the future, or sorry, just to racing shoes in the future. You'll probably see a lot of training shoes coming out with it. And I think it's not just about pure speed, right? Like I think that's one of the reasons why the Carbon X has done so well with a lot of people, is because they absolutely can race in it. They can race in it for hours and hours and hours, and they can also put some good training miles in it too, and it holds up. So I think you're definitely going to see a lot. It's not going to be used in every single circumstance, but you'll definitely see more models from us, from everybody else in the future that have some of those carbon fiber plates in them.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think with the Carbon X in general, a lot of people looked at that initial weight, and when you compare it to maybe some other competitors, it is a little heavier, but I think at the end of the day, shoes are meant for specific purposes, and the Carbon X had in mind Jim Walmsley, the ultra marathon. It's a little more stable. It's a very inherently stable shoe for a carbon plated racer. So, that's a shoe that's very interesting. We've got the Carbon Rocket, and then of course the upcoming Rocket X. Now, is that a shoe? We saw it on the feet at the Olympic trials. Is that a shoe that you can talk about? What's so special about this shoe?
Yeah, no, Elephine rocked that shoe. That was awesome to see her take the win and be able to use a shoe like that to its fullest capacity. We've got some other fun, actually some even more brand new foams that come into that shoe as well, and a little more critical on weight and getting down to some thinner stack heights, and bringing some of that kind of softer give to the shoe. So it's this beautifully lightweight, what Walmsley call it is trials dagger. I think that's a great analogy for it, just because it's that very well balanced, nice lightweight, still has that pop you need to it, and the plate really holds that rocker, so you still just accelerate to the toes and off. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of fun. That'll probably be more like my 10K and under shoe, and I think we'll see a lot of our elite athletes use it marathon, all the way up to the marathon.
Okay, that's what I was curious about, because when the Carbon Rocket first came out, I think it definitely was new for HOKA. It had a unique feel. For me personally, it wasn't necessarily my marathon shoe, but I think for some people it might have been. But now when we look at the Rocket X, was that shoe specifically built for the marathon, or what was the actual purpose of that shoe?
Yes. Yeah, that shoe was 100% focused around getting our marathon athletes across the line as fast as possible. So it was developed hand in hand with NAZ elite athletes and some of our other marathoners. And we wanted to make sure that it was that perfect blend of efficient, lightweight, and still having some of that soft edge to it.
Yeah. Well, the Rocket X, definitely a very unique shoe, very niche shoe. We look at some other shoes from HOKA, more recently the TenNine, an absolute beast of a shoe, and it does the job of running downhill. That's what it was built for. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the philosophy behind that shoe was and why you guys decided to build that shoe?
Yeah. We built that shoe because we still have some of the original innovators that came out with our very first prototype. We're blessed to have them still here with HOKA, Christophe and Jean-Luc. And that original concept for them was how do we run an ultra marathon as comfortably and smoothly as possible. And they took a look back at some of their initial sketchbooks and prototypes and wanted to push in some of those initial directions more. So they, kept on taking foam, adding even more of it to the heel, testing how that would feel specifically downhill. Because HOKA launched in the mountains of France, in Annecy, France. And, we are lucky here enough to also have mountains right out of our windows. And we're worried we're going to lose Jean-Luc at some point because he always takes these prototypes out and goes bombs down the hills. So Jean-Luc can run down a Romero Trail here in Santa Barbara and love it. It means it's probably a pretty damn good concept. So I think we had some of these that were tested and the athletes loved it, especially downhill, and just kind of was that natural extension of what HOKA had already been testing and playing with, just pushing some of those boundaries further. So it's a fun one.
Yeah, I think sometimes pushing those boundaries is important because I think we talked about a lot of what you used in the what kind of came out of the TenNine will be cycled into other products down the road. So it is about learning and growing and, helping make shoes better and better. So I think that's important. Do you think we're going to see more niche shoes like this in other avenues of running from HOKA?
I think so. Yeah, you'll definitely see us continue to try to push some of those geometries in different ways. And sometimes that'll be for like some of those very specific scenarios, and sometimes it'll just be geometries inspired by those that are then added to some of the other features that we're using, some of the other materials or plates or designs. So there will always be an evolution and adaptation of what we've done in previous versions. So that was the TenNine was a super limited release, and I think you got to see some of that like way out there concept refined a little bit more for running with the Clifton Edge, and the Clifton Edge is still meant to be that like test car, right? To get to see what might come next. So there's always going to be sort of that flow of information, that flow of learnings into our inline shoes, into new models, into whatever keeps us excited here at HOKA.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited.
It's fun, right? I mean, we get to, play with new shoes. That's the most fun part.
Right. And talking about new shoes, I'm sure you guys always have ideas for what's to come next. We talked about Jim Walmsley being kind of one of the big testers on the Carbon X. Has he hinted or maybe expressed interest on a carbon fiber plate shoe built specifically for the ultramarathon, but instead of on the road, for the trail?
We can't talk too much about future projects now. Come on.
Okay, but it's definitely something that is in Jim Walmsley ideas of possibilities for the future.
I think we've got a couple athletes that have had some fun ideas around what racing shoes could look like in the trail in the future. Yeah, there's some fun things in the works.
Awesome. Sure. Well, I think with carbon fiber plates in general, it's only the beginning. There's so much that can be done. Is that something that you guys are looking at? And I guess, where do you think the possibilities end for carbon fiber plates? What is the future for it?
Yeah, carbon fiber is a phenomenal material just because it is so lightweight and responsive. It helps to add that extra snap or maintain some of those geometries. Like HOKA uses it to maintain that rocker profile. But it is still a secondary material that you're adding in. So some of the lightest or most simple concept can still get you that great cushion underfoot. So I don't think you'll see carbon fiber plate in every shoe from here on out, but I think you'll definitely see options available for people to use across the range of types of runs, locations, terrain, everything else like that.
Yeah, I mean, carbon fiber plate shoes are the hot topic for kind of that high-end competitive racer, but I guess right now I've been noticing a lot more people just in general are wearing HOKAs, from beginners to, advanced runners. Is that something with now the coronavirus and a lot more people picking up running, is that something that you're seeing HOKA just becoming more mainstream?
I think because I work with the brand, I see HOKAs everywhere, which makes it sometimes harder to parse out. But yeah, we see, I think, especially with COVID shutting things down and people needing some of that mental space and that relief, just be able to get out on their own and power themselves. We've definitely noticed a lot more runners, even just searching for generic running shoe terms on our website, or people trying to find running again, which is great. So I think we see a lot of that passion coming up, and HOKA has really brought comfort to the forefront, which speaks, I think, universally to a lot of different runners. So we see everybody from elites to brand new runners with the second wave of running, finding and loving the shoes.
Yeah. And now, whether you're a beginner runner or just new to the HOKA brand, I think one of the questions I hear most is, what should I start off with? What shoe is, that shoe to really test HOKA out with for, maybe a beginner runner, just someone new to the brand?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'd probably steer them in the Clifton start. You can go so many more ways from there. You can go more cushioned, you can go lighter weight, you can go more responsive, but the Clifton has a really great balance of that HOKA soft and smooth. So I think that's usually an easy place for people to understand if they like the general concept of HOKA, what more they could want, or what could work better for them. But it's an easy shoe to love. So that's probably the best place to start.
Yeah, the Clifton is a staple, but really HOKA, their line is expanded so much. There's so many offerings nowadays. Can you talk about, I guess, with how many shoes are available, what is one shoe that you feel like gets overlooked but is, one of your favorite shoes, or a shoe you just really enjoy?
It's a good question. I'm going to say the Challenger ATR. Just because you can use that in so many different ways and so many different terrains. The Trail PLM, if there's one shoe he brings, we can only fit one shoe in the pack when we're on a development trip in China or on a market trip somewhere else. It's probably the Challenger, and he throws down some pretty fast times no matter where he is on those. So that was one that always had that like great cushion, lightweight. The lugs run really well road and trail. Yeah, it's probably my overlooked hero from the HOKA line.
Yeah, Challenger ATR, a solid shoe, and really HOKA started out on the trails. You guys have a lot of roots in the trails, and a lot of people don't know it, but HOKA is one of our top-selling trail shoes across the board. Where do you see trail moving for HOKA in the future? There are so many great offerings right now. We have the Torrent, the Challenger. There are so many great shoes. What do you see the future is for HOKA Trail?
Yeah, part of it is people are getting out and discovering the trails more and more. So more people are looking for a wider variety of trail shoes. So we've got some of those fun concepts we're working with our athletes on, which will be super fun, and push the boundaries of kind of what we consider road technologies onto the trail. But we actually launched a couple of hiking models here at the beginning part of last year. And I got to work on some of those initial models. Like the Kaha has a great backpacking boot that just can handle all day. Even like the Speedgoat, you'll see variations where we have some like mid cuts that make it great for backpacking, and some like the most runnable sandal I've ever worn is going to be out now, called the Hopara. And so when I love the mountains. We were here in California and lucky to have the Sierras so close. Went backpacking what's called the High Sierra Trail last year. It starts in the Redwoods on the west side of the Sierras, and you exit on Whitney. And I got to use the Speedgoat Mid and the Hopara, and they crossed every river crossing super well. Handled, can't remember how many thousands of feet of climbing that was, but like 70 miles and probably 30,000 feet of climbing over the week. I think you'll see HOKA cushion and technical expertise translating really well into hiking product, fast hiking product, trail running, very fast and elite trail running, and anybody that wants to get out will find something fun to love.
Yeah, there's just so much great options, and I like that you brought up the Speedgoat because here at Running Warehouse, it's a favorite. It's really a shoe that can do it all. It's so highly cushioned, so comfortable, and it's come so far since that very first version. I think that very first version, I wasn't even the biggest fan of it, but each version that came after that was just so much better. And I guess going back to the original Speedgoat, not a lot of people know that Karl Meltzer had a big role in that shoe. Can you talk about how that shoe began, and did you ever think it would get to where it is today?
I really hoped it would. Like that was one we can say we learned a lot from the first round. The first version definitely had some fit issues and some geometries that we wanted to change. But we've been asked pretty much since the brand started for something that had that aggressive of a lug system, that much cushion. And probably the person who was screaming for that loudest was Carl. And Carl was, I believe he was our first trail athlete here in the US. And for those that don't know who Carl Meltzer is, he's the kind of the godfather of US trail running. I believe he still has the most 100-mile wins out of any man alive, something like 30 to 40. Not only has he completed that many 100-mile races, he's won them. And he also is a little sadistic. Like he likes to put himself and others through some pretty gnarly courses. He has a race, the Speedgoat 50K up in Utah, and that would be where people, probably could find some switchbacks, but he would send you straight up the mountain instead. But his nickname was the Speedgoat, and Carl loved these huge challenges, like we mentioned, and he really wanted this gnarly, grippy shoe with cushioning for days. So we worked kind of in partnership with him to identify some of those key characteristics. So we ended up with deeper lugs than we put on any of the previous Hokas, still maintaining super lightweight and breathable upper. And I think the first version, like I mentioned, fit could have been a little better. Wider base for a more stable platform is something we learned, and then each model has just gotten better and better and better. So that's definitely my go-to trail running shoe is the Speedgoat. It's a phenomenal. We always saw that as potentially the cornerstone of the Hoka Trail lineup, and I think it's kind of evolved that way.
Yeah, it's my go-to as well. And you talk about the traction was a big component of that shoe and adding some larger lugs. And it's funny because it does have ridiculous grip with that Vibram Mega Grip, but the lugs, you don't, as grippy and large as they are, you don't really feel them. And it's crazy that you can go to the roads, you can run on the roads pretty smoothly, and then you go on the trails and then you get this amazing grip, but it's not like too much, it's that perfect blend. And then of course the highly cushioned midsole, that shoe really is the ultimate ultra marathon shoe.
I think the cushion might be why it runs so well on the roads. Like you don't see too many trail shoes, especially. There's no rock plate in there. The foam is what absorbs the points of the trail. But we've got some athletes and some people here, even internally of Hoka, that prefer to use the Speedgoat on the road over everything else just because they love how it feels and rides.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you'd think usually like the best trail shoe, it does one thing good, and I've really felt the Speedgoat does do one thing good, but then it also does a lot of other things pretty good. So that's probably the shoe that I use the most on the trail lineup. But we also have the Torrent, and I know me and you talked about the Torrent back in December, the Torrent 2 coming out. The Torrent was a favorite of a lot of people, and there have been some small changes. Can you talk about what went into the newest version and what people can expect? Are they still going to get that same Torrent feel, but revamped, or do we have a completely new shoe?
It's a revamp without like moving on entirely. That it's definitely after the same ethos of lightweight, a little more aggressive trail runner. So the weight ends up still in that same general area. I think we focused on making sure some of that durability was still there, balanced with the weight. So kind of that protective rand, the lugs getting a little bit more refined so that you still get that great grip at such a lightweight shoe. And then the upper actually also introducing recycled content for the first time on our trail lineup, which is something we've been looking forward to putting into some of our trail shoes. So I think you get that kind of the utility is very much focused on the same runner, the same kind of use, with some of those small functional updates in fit, comfort, durability, and progressive materials.
Awesome. Yeah,
You're gonna race it all on the trails, or are you sticking to roads?
For the time being, I'm sticking to the roads, sticking to the track, but I would like to get to the trails at one point. I think it's just eventually everyone transitions over, so it's going to happen. And if I do, I think the Torrent would be, a great option because it is just so light, so smooth. It's a great shoe. So, I think everything from trails to roads to racing to even track, like HOKA has really, in the last couple years, pinpoint down every single market and has just innovated and expanded and brought an awesome, lineup. So every category, HOKA's killing it right now. So I'm super excited for the future.
Yeah, me too. It's a ton of fun to work on. We call whenever the new samples show up Christmas, because basically we get to see all these new projects come to life that we've been working on for so long, and we've had a lot of really awesome Christmases. So there's some fun stuff coming.
Oh yeah, I also whenever I get my HOKA sample package delivered to the door, it also feels like Christmas at my house, just because it is so cool to see, the newest and most innovative thing you guys are working on. And every time I get a package, I'm always think I can't get amazed, and there's something new and crazy. So it's cool to see where HOKA's going in the future. And it was awesome talking shoes, but I'm going to move this forward. We got a lot of fan questions for you. I think one of the most fan questions we've ever gotten in the history. So we're going to weed it down to just a few, but question number one is a question that I've actually talked with a lot of HOKA designers about, and I'm curious to see where we're going to move forward in the future. So why are all heel drops 5 millimeter or under? Will we ever see a higher drop shoe?
I think we really like that 4 to 6 millimeters is our sweet spot, depending on the foam and the geometries of the shoe, because it allows runners to strike wherever their foot is naturally going to strike. So it's not necessarily adding wedges that will introduce an earlier landing. It's not at a zero drop where some of the softer foams might compress and actually have you at negative. So it allows us to adapt to a variety of runners. And that's kind of one of our core design tenets. So I think we're very comfortable sticking around that. We're always exploring and trying some new ones, but we've kind of honed in on that as a sweet spot for HOKA.
Yeah, and I think even when we start looking at carbon fiber plate shoes, you guys are one of the few, I maybe the only that have a lower drop carbon fiber plate shoe. So that is interesting to see, and at least gives people options. So that's interesting. Question number two, and this one hit me close to home because this was a favorite shoe of mine. Question is, loved the Evo Speedgoat. Will we see more special edition Evo projects come to market in the future?
Yes, in some different names, whatever it may be, but I think that that's a way that we try to keep pushing innovation out. So I think the TenNine is an example of those kind of innovative quick to market projects. I would argue that even the Clifton Edge is one of those. And we do have a couple more fun ones. So we definitely, we will have some more of those kinds of projects in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the Evo Speedgoat in particular really shocked me because it kind of just showed up here at our warehouse. We didn't know it was coming. Can you talk about how that shoe came to be? I know Jim Walmsley was wearing it, I believe, at the Western States. How did that shoe become what it was?
Yeah. Like I said, we have a very strong relationship with a lot of our athletes, so we're tinkering and we're using them as guinea pigs sometimes, or having them help us with some of those advanced concepts. And we had been focusing on making that max cushion shoe even lighter weight. So we were trying up some new uppers, we were trying out some new foams, and we were kind of testing those out. And a couple of our athletes, like Jim and I believe Jared, wore it for Western that year too. Loved the shoe and wanted to use it there and at UTMB as well. And we got to a point where we were confident that it was actually ready for production. And we knew that it resonated so strongly with our athletes. We had kind of an inkling that we could probably introduce it into the market and show consumers, or show our runners, what was out there too. So that was us testing something and it being ready for market at just kind of a perfect time. And if it's ready to go, we always want to provide the best experience to runners. So we pushed it out and saw what people thought.
Yeah, I mean, I was excited that it came. I mean, when I got it on my feet, it was exactly what I had been asking for. So it was awesome to try that. And when we start looking at these shoes built for certain races, Western States, UTMB, I think different courses obviously are going to require different needs. So that makes sense. But UTMB in particular, I know a lot of UTMB athletes are HOKA athletes. How big is UTMB for the brand of HOKA? I know you guys bring a big party of all the HOKA workers out for kind of a celebration out there. What does UTMB mean for HOKA?
Yeah, UTMB is sort of a celebration of the roots of the brand, as well as a way to celebrate our athletes that are pushing themselves against some of the best competition in the world, on the craziest courses in the world. For those that aren't familiar, UTMB is the Ultra Tour Mont Blanc, and they run literally around Mont Blanc, which sits in between France, Italy, and Switzerland. So you get to travel into 3 different countries, and 108, 110 miles of just gnarly terrain. And HOKA was born in the Alps really close by in Annecy. And so that was one of the races that our founders were training for, racing, testing out products on originally. So it has a really special place in our heart, especially on the trail side, just because it's a great event, ton of energy, and some brand history for us too.
Yeah, I'm hoping to make it out to UTMB one of these years. I've seen the video and it looks like an amazing event. So yeah, that's definitely on the bucket list. But on the topic of trails, the final question, and I may have to take you up on this once we get back down to Santa Barbara and things are a little bit more back to normal. But final question, what is the best trail to run in Santa Barbara?
How good a shape are you in? We've got some steep hills. I love when I'm especially trying to get back into it. You can notice Santa Barbara Mountain is straight up right behind us and pretty unrelenting. I love Romero because it's an old fire road that carves up over the course of about 7 miles or so. And so you get it's runnable the whole way, even for people who are kind of not the most technically adept. But you can also take a couple offshoots that are more technical and head straight down the ravine. And it's a pretty popular mountain biking trail as well. So for having that, like, you can do it all trail, I think Romero is probably one of the best ones in Santa Barbara to hit up.
Awesome. I will
come on down. We'll run it.
Yeah, we'll go out and test out the TenNine in full downhill sprint. Well, awesome. Well, thanks again. Super awesome to hear about the new shoes, everything coming out from HOKA. There's so much great things. If people want to keep up to date on HOKA, where can they find you guys on social media?
Yeah, we're on Instagram and Facebook, and that's probably the best way to see all of what we do. We also have a blog on our website, but what I really love about HOKA's commitment to the community is how much we support our athletes and how much our athletes mean to us, not only from marketing, but just from the product side and as members of our family. And I think following some of the HOKA athletes is probably one of the best ways to really understand what HOKA means. And like the 2 that sort of stood out for me are Joe Gray, who is one of our newer athletes, but he's been with the brand for several years now. And he kicks ass, anything uphill and down. And his Instagram offers great perspective, especially in some of the recent times we've had. And I think Anime Flynn also has been pushing pretty hard for some of those, with some of that great content too. So I think all of our athletes, those 2 in particular, are really fun to follow. And then the HOKA sites as well.
Yeah, I follow several HOKA athletes, and you just have such a diverse lineup that really from roads to trails and even just more casual recreational runners that just love running. You guys really support a lot of different types of runners, and
Are there some of the athletes that you've followed that you like more?
I mean, Jim Walmsley, of course. I mean, he's kind of the peak of the ultra marathon world. So, Jim is amazing, and I think someone that I could see another 10 years, 15 years of just pure dominance. He's killing it, and I don't see him slowing down a bit. So
he's fun to watch for sure.
Yeah, and then of course my fellow HOKA Aggies, they're all out here grinding, and most of them work their own jobs at home or work their own jobs here in SLO, and they're just getting by and running, and they're still competing at a very high level. So there's so many different
for sure.
Yeah. So, well, Zach, thank you so much for your time. I know you are extremely busy, man. There's so many shoes coming down the pipeline, and I appreciate just being able to take an hour out of your time to discuss what's to come.
Yeah, great to talk to you guys.
Yeah. Well, until next time, that was the Running Warehouse Connection.